Same.
Welcome back to Celtic State of Mind. I'm Paul John Dykes. This week, I'm joined by John Paul Mason. And ordinarily, JP, we get an opportunity for an hour to catch up, talking about Celtic, and often coming away with some nice insights and anecdotes, etc. The mood in the camp has changed massively in the last couple of weeks. JP, look at the season that we're having. We're come off the back of a campaign last season where we're a penalty shootout away from winning a treble. A treble was something that was very difficult to attain, but was normalised by people like Brendan Rodgers, who was back at the helm. And we just about got there. And I think at the end of the season, a lot of the chat on Acsom certainly was around, right, we've got an opportunity here we're a bit short, and I think the cup final showed us that. We've got an opportunity here to build on something. We failed to do it. And then this season has gone from Rodgers, and it looked like it was going on a downward spiral with the energy and the style of play and the horseshoe of death, JP, and we started seeing defeats creeping in more regularly, replaced by Martin O'Neill. And Martin O'Neill gives us a lift. And if you were watching this on a chart, it goes through the roof. Martin O'Neill leaves, and I think we're even lower down than we were at the point of Brendan leaving the football club in terms of aspirations. And what we expect expectation-wise this season. JP, can you try in some way explain to me where did it all go wrong?
We've only got an hour, haven't we?
Yes. You can go on longer if you want. It might take longer.
I think what's important from my perspective is to try and establish what happened in the days and couple of weeks after the Bayern Munich game. And I know we keep going back to that, but it's a fairly important benchmark, and we're still in the same calendar year that happened. So I don't make any apologies for going back to that. But my question, maybe back to you, in order to start this off, would be what happened in terms of the player's psyche, the mentality. Was having that that challenge of the Champions League taken away from them something that just led them to come back to domestic football and be like, we're back to this, and we're far enough ahead that we're probably going to be all right in the league. We'll get to the Scottish Cup final, and we should have enough within ourselves as the players to do this job and get it done. Because everybody points to, the football was terrible under Brendan Rodgers pretty much for the whole year, but then they omit to mention the fact that we qualified out of the Champions League group with that 1-0 win against Young Boys. However difficult it was, a 1-0 win against Young Boys in the Champions League is a million miles away from where we are right now. So
better than any result we've had this season.
Yeah, aye. And again, it was by a forced error by Adam Ida. He doesn't get the credit for it, which is a shame for him, because he's left with it as a bit of a kind of villain figure, really. Not villain, but just kind of like he's got hopeless or wasted money attached next to his name, despite having done something quite significant again in this calendar year to help us get out of that group stage. So, and also he then scored 2 goals against Aston Villa as well in that same tournament. But that's the question that I would be posing, as to, is that in the players' mindset that they've done it so often that when it came back to, when you took away the sort of glitz and the glamour of the Champions League and to keep your levels up, and then people will go, well, that's the manager's job to keep that up. But the manager can only do so much if it's not within the players, and if the players have been sort of potentially playing for a move, a la season before COVID. Dyson Maeda has a standout season, and he's thinking to himself, I'm going at the end of this season. I'll post the best numbers I can. That might sound selfish in terms of his respect, and people will be like, we should be doing it for the club. But he posts the best figures, and, in a normal world, unfortunately, Dyson Maeda is sold in the summer. But again, in a normal world, we have an adequate replacement lined up to replace him. Kyogo also leaves in that January and isn't replaced, which is a massive, massive blow to the squad going into the second half of the season, because you're moving Maeda around, you're relying on other people, and it creates a kind of Oh, really? Is that our ambition, that we sell one of our main strikers in January and don't replace them? Like, it doesn't really augur well around the squad's mood if that is what's happening.
Well, I think it's a good starting point.
Talk about it from there.
I think it's a good starting point. Now, yesterday, someone, when I wasn't even discussing it on social media, says, "Are you going to mention Bayern Munich again?" It's important to mention that as a benchmark or as a starting point in this discussion.
I'm talking about 5 years ago.
No, I know. This is it. 10 months ago, right? And I think it is important to use that as a starting point. I'm going to use it as a starting point. And the phrase I used was from the Allianz to also Rands in 10 months. 10 months, JP. And I'm going to bring up the image which is saved on here because I knew that we would refer back to it. But for the purposes of me trying to speak about squad management. So after we were knocked out of the Champions League at this stage in February this year, I think there are some players in that photograph, some players in that squad, JP, who are at a point where, yes, it was almost as if the balloon was deflated as soon as we were knocked out. And this is what it comes down. It comes down to squad management. So there are certain players in a squad, and I think this is both a manager's job and a head of department's job, right? And we do have one, whereby you've got to manage the squad, and there's different makeup of different groups of people in that squad. So I'm looking at this squad just now, and I'm looking at your metronomes, if you like Callum McGregor, who just continually comes back again and again and again. And although not in this picture, James Forrest falls into that category. I think you need a group of guys like that in a squad who are there and always there, and they give you that consistency. They also allow new people coming into the squad, JP, to understand the makeup of Celtic. What is Celtic? What are our expectations? What are our standards? And they are part of the winning mentality. They pass it on to the new breed, the new crop of players coming through. So I think you've got a crop of players like that. You've got a crop of players who are going to fall off a cliff after this particular moment because this is why they're here. And I think in this picture, this team group, I think Nicholas Kuhn and Jeffrey Schlupp fall into that category because I think their form did fall off the side of a cliff. Then you've got players, JP, who came to Celtic and were promised the Champions League platform, and they were promised that if they were to perform on that platform, they would get a move to a bigger league or a richer club. And I think there's a whole crop of those guys. And I think Dice Maeda's in that group. I think Rio Hatati's in that group from this photograph here. And if it comes to the point where they then don't get the move, at the point, and we've spoken about this, the maximum point for these guys probably was at the end of the season. And if we don't manage the squad properly and don't give them the move, that's another problem that you're going to be faced with. Then you've got a group of guys who are quite new to the party, and this is their first rodeo, if you like. And Engels is in that category, and Trusty is in that category. And although it's not the first time he's playing Champions League, Schmeichel's new to the party, so he's part of that group. So you're managing these players in different ways.
Nicholas Kuhn as well.
Nicholas Kuhn. And again, with Kuhn, I think he believes right, and he's probably right. At this stage in Celtic's progress, the best we can do is to get to a playoff in the Champions League, to get out of that league stage or the old group stage. And he's probably right. And then following on from that, and we've spoken about this, if you can do it on a consistent basis, JP, everything builds. Everything builds. The trajectory goes up, as does your expectation levels. And I'm talking after 3, 4, or 5 seasons, not just after one. And at the beginning of this season, I said my expectation was to do what we did last season in Europe. Imagine playing 10 Champions League games out with the qualifiers. That should be the target. And we've failed to do it. So it's about managing the expectations of the players, managing the promises you've made to some players, and it all comes into squad management. And what we've done as a football club, and we've done it time and time again, is we've just bought a tranche of players and thrown them into the squad, all at different times of their careers, all at different points of their trajectory, JP. And if you don't get the squad management right, and the recipe isn't right within that group, the group falls to bits. The group doesn't work, and it has to be done gradually. I don't think Celtic should be in a situation, where we need to go out and buy 8, 9, 10 players in a window, yet we consistently find ourselves in that place. The one time recently where we didn't do that, was the transfer window where we bring in Trusty, Ida and Engels. Now, if we had another transfer window like that this summer, we're having a different conversation, JP.
100%.
Love or loathe the players. You know, you might not have thought it was value. And by the way, you're probably right. We probably could have got every one of those guys for a few million quid less. That takes us on to a discussion about the CFO and the CEO, which I'm sure we'll get to. But if we had that kind of outlay where we know as fans, JP, and it's normalised, we're going to be losing, on average, 2 players from the first team every single season. That's what happens, right? We sell 2 players. And with that money, though, if you were to reinvest it the way we did in Brendan Rodgers' second season, you're going to see progress. You're going to see, you're going to see an improvement in the standard of your squad. And if you have that, if you like, that rotation properly, then you're going to get to the point where when it comes to Alistair Johnston's end of his Celtic cycle, you have someone else in. One of those 129 right backs that we've looked at will be good enough and he'll come in, or he might already be in the building. We're way off track with this. It's going to take a complete overhaul of the football department to get us back on track, JP. January transfer window this season, moving on to that, it's not going to be a magic wand. It's not going to sort out. Currently, as we stand with the people in place, this January is not going to sort out this mess that we're in. And obviously that's frustrated Brendan Rodgers. In the club's view, or specifically in Dermot Desmond's view, he hasn't gone about it the right way and he's been emptied. And what we're left with is a group of players who haven't been managed. They've not been managed. The squad management hasn't been there, JP. It's just like throwing a group of, it's like in your industry, right? They're all good musicians, chuck them on a stage, might not work. They might not be able to jam because there's no chemistry, there's no dynamic, nobody's managing the situation. That's exactly where we find ourselves in right now. The quality of the squad, albeit some of that's down to injury, JP. I get it. CCV and Jota on that picture. They're injured. AJ's injured.
Jota happened at a point this year where we still had something to do about it. And
absolutely.
And we leave it until the last minute and then sign 2 players in the exact same position for round about the same money, both of whom have contributed very, very little at this point in their Celtic career. Obviously, you know and I know that there's plenty of examples in the past of players that have got to this point in their Celtic career after less than 6 months, and then they could have an amazing second 6 months or an amazing, maybe the whole year they're still finding their feet or whatever, and then have a good pre-season next season and come into it and actually manage to bond with the squad rather than coming in the last day of the transfer window. But more to the point of the Brendan Rodgers thing in the summer is that people are recycling this idea that Brendan Rodgers deliberately sabotaged the transfer window for his own gain. Like, what gain is there for him to sabotage a transfer window? There's only one person looking bad in that situation if he has done that, and it's him. And I'm sorry, but I don't get how you could go from being so proud of the club and being in that position in Germany in February to being like in the summer, being like, I'm just going to just set this place on fire and drive away with my fist out the window laughing like that. Convince me how that's a reasonable narrative. And then apparently he signed off all the players. Well, we know that's not true. And the reflection of the players Liam's assessment of Shin Yamada and how we signed him based on 2 years ago's data is frightening, really. I mean, so you're signing a player based on what he did 2 years ago rather than what he did in the recent past.
We've got serious issues when it comes to data. Absolutely, JP. I mean, even if you just were to look on paper and have this discussion today about quality, right? And you look at the forward line of, let's say, Jota on the left, Ida through or Kyogo through the middle, or Ida through the middle and Kuhn on the right. And who do you replace that with? Well, you replace it with Balakwisha, Tuneke and Yamada. And the outlay for those 3 players is just under £12 million. And we're now in December, coming to the end of December. What they have given us, their contribution between all 3 players are 2 goals and 2 assists. So you're removing that level of quality out of your team and you're replacing it. So I'm going to go back to this and I'm going to focus on last night's game as well whilst I do it, JP, right? So you're looking at the starting 11 and you think, right, Johnny Kenny's starting. Now we could have a debate as to whether or not you think he's good enough and everything else. I just think that's the state that we're in. Johnny Kenny starts. Now you've brought in a Japanese international in Shin Yamada.
One cap. Let's be clear about it. One cap, and Liam
as long as it wasn't a Rafael Brazil style cap.
Well, I mean, Liam said it was in a nothing game, so it wasn't as if they were bringing him in when they really needed something. And we really needed something last night, and I'm sorry, but his contribution last night...
This is what I'm getting at. His contribution last night. Now, I'm trying to be fair to the player, and I'm trying to say, right, we brought him in from the cold, JP. I think he's not been involved in the six squads leading up to last night, right? And I think the last time he played was against Hearts away, and he was thrown in after not having played or been involved in 8 squads prior to that game. So on 2 occasions... if I'm trying to be balanced here, I'm thinking, is that really good squad management? Is it good management of the player where he's not been in 8 squads, you throw him in against Hearts, he's not been in 6 squads, you throw him in last night? But the point is, when I'm looking at him on the bench, I'm saying, right, so what can he bring to this? Johnny Kenny's not having a great game. He should score in the first half. He should score a couple in the first half, JP. So you're looking at your bench here, right? Well, we do have a squad. We do have a striker here who's a Japanese international who's meant to have pace to burn, etc., etc. And you bring him on, and he gets 2 chances, JP. One of them's a kind of half scissor kick, which goes wildly over the bar. And the second one is he can actually travel into the box if he desires, but he doesn't. He tries to hit it with the outside of his right boot, and it goes wide. Doesn't even get a save. 2 chances, none of them on target. And I'm looking at that and thinking, right, the front end of my brain's telling me, you have a go at the player. But let's, again, peel it back a few layers. Why is the player in that position in the first place, is what I would ask. And what I want, and you said it last season when it came to signing Ida, as long as the manager signs off on the player, I'm quite happy. He never signed off. Brendan Rodgers didn't sign off in Shin Yamada. He didn't. Brendan Rodgers and Peter Lawwell had no knowledge of the signing of Shin Yamada. That was done by Paul Tisdale, the identifier of talent, and he's not been played by Brendan. So that's where you see the disconnect between the head of the football department and the board and Brendan Rodgers not playing players that have been identified. Now, since Nancy's come in, maybe it's a clean slate for guys like Chuneke or Shin Yamada or JSP, who made his way back onto the bench last night, JP. And he's thrown in. So we can look at the player and say, that's not good enough, and it's not. Or we can peel a few layers back and say, a recruitment approach isn't good enough. And that's deeper than just the first 11 and the subs bench on a match day, JP. That delves right into what are we doing to recruit and identify players. And that, for me, is the root of the problem that we face when we look at the team and the quality isn't there.
Yeah, and again, just to go back to the sort of timeline of it, Brendan Rodgers spends the whole summer saying, and he's asked at every single opportunity, what about recruitment? When's the players coming? I can only imagine, as somebody in his position, how frustrating that must have been, because he's sitting there going, I know they're not coming. He probably knew at all those occasions that he was being asked, I know they're not coming, because look who's in charge.
Yep.
Like this is who I'm dealing with. Good guys, working Celtic and Christmas and all that, right? See, to get onto that and the whole Peter Lawwell thing and using the threats and violence, right? I'll qualify this right now by saying any sort of approach to a member of staff outside of their work or inside their work, for that matter, that is in any way violent or threatening, I don't agree with. If you're flying to Portugal and standing outside Peter Lawwell's house and spitting in his face and all the rest of it, or doing whatever is alleged to have been done, I don't agree with that. I think we are entitled, as paying Celtic supporters who pay into the club every season, to question or criticise the job that is being done. I don't know why anybody would disagree with that. I'm not saying that you go up and abuse them personally in public or anything like that. Absolutely not. But we can sit on a forum like this and look at the facts of the matter and sort of say, well, no. I mean, just to briefly touch on Peter Lawwell, I met the guy twice on 2 occasions, and I actually checked the timeline to see what occasions they were, because on both occasions I shook his hand and thanked him for what he'd done for Celtic. The first time I met him was at half-time at Tynecastle when we were 3-0 up in 2012. So a fairly key year in the recent history of Scottish football. And we were hammering Hearts. When Yama had scored, Bruni had scored, I think, and done the Bruni in front of the Hearts supporters. It was a good night. I had somehow, through a friend, got into hospitality. I've never been in hospitality at Hearts before or since. But that night I was sitting next to Stuart Pearce, who was the Team GB manager, who was there looking at Scott Brown with a view to picking him for that team, allegedly. Mm-hmm. I was sitting right next to him in the fancy seats, if there are any, at Tynecastle, and I met Peter Lawwell there was like a wee lounge bit where there was tea and pies, and where they're accustomed to that side of life, you know, and it's not something that I'm used to, but I happened to find myself in there, and I went up to him and I said, what a player that Wanyama looks. And he went, I think we've won a watch there, and I just shook his hand and I said, great to meet you, Mr. Lawwell. And it was a short exchange, but a pleasant one. I had no reason to be anti-Peter Lawwell. I mean, I don't know how many people were at that point in time. If you circle back 13 years, how many people that are so vehemently against him now were at that time? Would you say that there was a lot of people against him at that time in 2012?
Well, it's interesting that, because when you're telling that story, I'm thinking about, and I've maybe mentioned this, and we were obviously going to touch on Peter Lawwell leaving, JP. I was thinking to myself, I have been in his company on 2 occasions, both at the games, and both through people that I know who are able to get into these areas of football stadiums, JP, that you refer to, and I found myself in that scenario. And it was not long after the release of my first book. I don't know if I've told this story on the show, but I'll very quickly tell the story. I was writing the Quality Street Gang. There was a picture of the team. And this is the team, for anyone who's a wee bit younger and maybe doesn't know this. This was the young group of players that came through Celtic's youth development, as it was not even called back then, after the Lions. So it's guys like Danny McGrain, Lou McCarry, Kenny Dalglish, George Conley, Paul Wilson, Vic Davidson, Davy Hay, and various others. And I had a picture, and it was when they were playing at a tournament in Italy in 1968. And I looked at the picture, and I love my history, and I couldn't name all the players, JP. And I looked at that, and I thought, I need to find out who these guys are. And it was my mission to speak to everybody who was on that trip in 1968. It was called the Junior European Cup. Celtic played Juventus and various other teams, Red Star Belgrade. So once I started working through the players, I was asking the few faces that I didn't recognise. Who's this? Oh, that's such and such, you know. And then it was my mission to then track that individual down. And one of the guys I didn't recognise was in the front row of the team, and he was a Celtic player called John Murray, and he was a right back. At the time, Danny McGrain didn't play right back. He played right half at that time. He obviously developed into a phenomenal world-class right back, and John didn't make the grade as a result of that. But John had been signed for Celtic to take over from Jim Craig, and Celtic paid money for him. They paid Morton thousands for him. He had played for Morton since he was about 17. So he's on the trip, and I find out who he is, and through circumstances, I end up getting really friendly with him, and he introduced me to Peter Lawwell. Peter Lawwell's team was the Quality Street Gang. I've got nothing against this guy on a personal level, and this will prove to you that I don't. His team growing up, the team he loved, was a Quality Street Gang. He loved them. And John says to me about the book, which I was writing with absolutely no knowledge of how to get it published, JP. I never had a clue. Who's publishing your book? I don't know. I just want to write it, and then we'll see where we are with that. Right, I'm going to ask Peter Lawwell if Celtic will publish your book. And if you've got the book, go and have a look. It's published by Celtic Football Club on the say-so of Peter Lawwell. He gave me a break, JP. So I'm not going to sit here and have an issue with somebody on a personal level. But as you say, in relation to that, as Celtic supporters, we should be able to have a balanced discussion where we can look for where the root of the problems are, and we can criticise performance. Now, I know there's a whole era, and I see them on social media, and they think we're the enemy at times, JP. There's a whole era of Celtic fans who will not criticise anything in the name of Celtic Football Club. I understand that, because Celtic and our fan base have been oppressed for decades. And for you to actually criticise a club who was a shining beacon for the Irish diaspora in Scotland when we won the European Cup in 1967, I can understand why they might think, are you really a Celtic fan? How dare you? Do you know your history? We've been oppressed for years and you're jumping in there. That I would expect that from the mainstream media, GP. I totally understand it. But without taking people to account, JP, and taking people's performance to account, without that, the club goes bust in the early 90s. Without that, right? You've got to question. We're not going bust. That's not what I'm suggesting. But what I'm saying is that was the last time the fans had to come together because the board were mismanaging the club to such a point that it was damaging the club. It could have ended us back then. It won't end us now, but I'll tell you what it might do. It might result in Celtic not being the champions of Scottish football this season, and maybe even for a couple of seasons after that as well. So, JP, there is nothing wrong with having the balanced discussion that you and I have every single week, and me and other Acsom contributors have every single day. Absolutely nothing. And there's nothing personal. As I say, I have nothing personal against Peter Lawwell. I mean, as I say, without him, what would have happened after that? I may not have written a second and a third. I may not have set up a podcast. I may not be sitting here talking to you right now. So there is nothing personal against Peter Lawwell in respect to what I'm saying.
Well, I mean, at that point in 2012, we were months away from the so-called five-way agreement being signed. Now, did a bit of research on that in the last 24 hours because I thought, well, we're going to be speaking about Peter Lawwell, and there's question marks over whether he did or did not read the five-way agreement, which is out there. There's plenty of blogs and articles written about that question mark. So at that point, I had no knowledge of that because it didn't exist yet. The second time I met him was at a lunch. My friend Nick Wood of the Heriot Watt CSC, shout out to Nick, an absolute legend of a guy. He invited me as his +1 to Lisbon Lions lunch at the Doubletree Hilton. Again, venturing into a world that I didn't really have any familiarity with, a fancy Celtic meal with the Lisbon Lions in attendance. The last time that Billy McNeill ever appeared in public, actually.
Is that right?
Yeah. Wow. He was helped in by his teammates, and it was a really, really sad sight because that guy's that's the strip. Guy's a giant to me, Billy McNeill. Like, he was the first Celtic manager that I remember, and he was in a really bad way, I kind of avoided the Lisbon Lions table. I just wanted, everyone was kind of going over with their books because everybody got a copy of the 1967 book on their dinner table, and people were going over and getting them signed and everything like that. And fair enough, but I just kind of was like, nah, they're all, that's their teammates. They're having this moment. I didn't want to interrupt them in the middle of this. It didn't feel right. But the person that I did make a beeline for while everybody else was swarming around the table, bearing in mind what we'd just done that season, it was season 2016, 2017. Well, what had we just done? So who was at the helm? Of course, I'm going to go over and shake his hand and say, thank you very much, Mr. Law. Just wanted to say that to you. And he was like, oh, you're very welcome, son. And that's my second interaction with him. So 5 years apart. And then obviously there's been plenty of things that have happened since then that I maybe would have issue with. I wouldn't go up and spit in his face. I wouldn't go up and shout in his face. I wouldn't stand outside his house or do anything like that. But I would definitely have questions to ask him about why did you rehire Neil Lennon on the basis of his managerial prowess and in between leaving Celtic and coming back to Celtic? Why was there not due diligence and a proper recruitment search done to get the best manager available? Because I'm sorry, I love Neil Lennon, but he wasn't the best manager available. And COVID or otherwise, I just think that was a misstep. And if you come to more recent past, the way that he spoke at the AGM was, completely out of turn. The whole the way that it was structured, everything, and I'm sure that he must have structured it in that sense to allow us not to ask the questions that needed to be asked. The 15-minute video that we're finishing at 12:30, whether you like it or not, and then bringing it to a halt, a premature halt, and leaving way more questions than answers from that whole charade. So that's where I stand on Peter Lawwell now. And you've very recently said that history will judge his legacy as and when he leaves the club, and he's left the club, or he's leaving the club at the end of this month.
JP, I think it's important to share these kind of personal experiences because, and I understand why. People think that you've got an agenda, right? I don't mean you specifically. I just think if you appear on a podcast like this, a show like this, people think, oh, you've got an agenda. You're doing this because you want clicks or you want notoriety or attention or whatever it may be. So I think it's important to say, in actual fact, I admired what Peter Lawwell did in his first tenure as the CEO. I think that when you look at his financial record of the football club during that period, he turned it around, JP, right? He turned it around. I think there is an issue when someone who has been brought in to deal with footballing matters starts to get involved in footballing matters. I think that cannot be ignored. I don't think that a manager needs an overbearing CEO to tell him which players are not being signed, etc. Obviously, they fit a function within that process of signing players, JP, but you don't decide who does and who doesn't based on relationships you may or may not have with other agents. Whilst you were talking there, I was paying attention 100%, but something was just text to me. And you know when you get a text, JP, that someone wants to get in touch with you these days, it's normally a WhatsApp or an email. So I'm going to bring this up because it is from Peter Martin's Twitter account. So I'm going to bring this up here. And this has just appeared on Twitter at 1:45. I am led to believe that discussions are now taking place with Wilfried Nancy and the Celtic Board to end his 2-week reign as Celtic manager. So listen, I cannot verify or otherwise if that is correct, but I'm going to ask you your reaction to that, JP. That's kind of breaking news.
Well, I mean, I said a couple of weeks ago that Paul Tisdale would either be the hero or the villain of the piece, and there's very little evidence here to suggest that he's the hero because due diligence has got to be done. We sat here and spoke about Wilfried Nancy and the potential of him, and we're very optimistic about it. I don't think at any point we were derisory about the MLS or the fact that he was coming from the MLS. That didn't really.
I stood up for him on Sky Sports. I've never been back on since because I felt it was a complete hatchet job, JP. I stood up for the fact that he was coming from the MLS.
When they brought up the Opta stats on screen in front of you and Jamie O'Hara, MLS was 10th.
Yep.
I don't know what
was that, 19 places ahead of Scotland?
Yeah, I don't know what the validity of those stats are, and people could turn around and be like, they're not worth the ink that they're made with, but they were put up on Sky Sports, so they must put some sort of value in them rather than them just being kind of like, oh, they don't hold any water or anything in this debate. But I find it really sad because he doesn't seem like a bad guy, and he's just probably the. We also said in the lead up to this that it's all very well, and I said this and got battered in the comments a couple of times by saying Pep Guardiola could walk into this, and because the structure isn't right and everything about the club isn't right, then you could get the best guy before he's the guy, quote Quinny, come in and not have any opportunity to become the guy because of the constraints. And if that is true, and Peter Martin would have to have serious testicular fortitude to be putting that up without any kind of knowledge or background knowledge. I mean, you don't put something like that up. I mean, you wouldn't put something like that up if, and
unless you've verified it, unless your source is solid, JP. Mm-hmm. And the thing is, Peter Martin's a broadcaster. He's a journalist. He is someone who I think cut his teeth on Sky Sports, I believe. Wasn't him that did was it not his Helicopter Sunday? Did he not name that? And then obviously set up as an independent. He's come to blows with Celtic in the past. He's been banned. He's been banned by Celtic, and he's a Celtic fan, Peter. But you're right. He does his due diligence. He's got a show on his channel, which is the journalists' show. The pundits, they come in. Hugh McDonald, fantastic pundit, and Stephen McGowan, I think one of the best in Scotland. So there's for me, there's an air of credibility, I think, what I'm saying here, JP. If someone like that is to say this is happening, he's done his due diligence, he's corroborated it, he trusts his source. And I want the reaction of those in the comment section. It's interesting, JP, when you come on and something like that happens live. You know, that's dead interesting, because you can't, you know, this is our reaction as it happens. I was going to come on today and talk about change. I've had various discussions this morning, as it happens, with people who are what I would describe in the know. And, you know, we're all of the same view. This just isn't working. It's just not working. We've done, you know, it's not like the situation, people have been comparing it to Ange. It's nothing like Ange's situation. What I found with Ange is a few things. I found that there was a clear vision of what he was aiming for. He knew exactly what it was he wanted, right? But there was also a connection, JP. Now, that connection can sometimes happen through the communication of press conferences, etc. We have not been given the opportunity to speak to Nancy as fans. But I think the connection also happens on match day. Now, it's very difficult for Ange. Were you at the Midtjylland game? Were you one of the few fans there?
No, didn't get a ticket. No, it was like a ballot, wasn't it? So
yeah.
No, I think it was like 12,500 were at that game. I wasn't.
So we were at that point of filtering fans back into stadiums post-COVID and all that kind of stuff. But there was a connection between the fan base and Ange that I felt pretty early on, whereby at least you understood what the vision was, JP. Even if it didn't work out, you understood what he was trying to do. And what I spoke about this morning is twofold. The first one being, I take nothing, and it's got nothing to do with the fact that he's French and English is his second language. It's got nothing to do with that. I take nothing from what he says post or pre-match, nothing at all that I look at and I cling on to and go, right, this is his vision, I believe in this. And I feel that there's no connection between him and the fans. Now, last night was a difficult one, obviously, but to walk up the tunnel with a head down, looking at your own feet, and not even raise your head up to the fans at Tannadice last night, JP, even though we got beat 2-1, you know, and he's not waited for his own players, never mind anybody else. And I said that this morning, even as a 13-year-old footballer playing boys club football, JP, you shook the hands of every single person on that football park, including the officials, before walking off. That's drummed into you. He just walked off the park. Right? Now, people might say disappointment, he's emotional. People might even say it's arrogant and rude. I don't know. I don't know the guy. Again, nothing personal against him. I'm feeling no connection, and I don't know what his vision is.
I have to be honest. You could probably put a lot of what he said into a different picture. Like you could, you know, like an actor in a different film or being directed by a different director. You could put a lot of that, but it's the context of everything. It's the context of the situations that he's been in that has probably led to confusion or misinterpretation or whatever. But my fear by mishandling the Brendan Rodgers situation, even if Brendan Rodgers wasn't going to sign a new deal, if he'd actually said, right, you guys, I've got no idea what you're doing, I'm not signing up for another year of this, I'll get you to the end of the season and we'll shake hands and that'll be that. And by all accounts, whether it's true or not, when he went in for that meeting that day that led to his being resigned, that was what he was trying to attempt to do, him and John Kennedy. Yeah. Now, is John Kennedy a rat? Is this all rat behaviour? I mean, I'm sorry, I don't see that. I don't see John Kennedy as being that type of person. He was committed to Celtic for a very long period of time. You could flip that and say, yeah, well, we were committed to him and we gave him a job for, not for life. Well, he might have had it for life. I don't know if he'd have stayed, but I'm just not having that was some sort of motivation for them to, like the whole Saudi thing. They were out of work. There's like a job comes available. I don't begrudge him from going there. Do I agree with the morals of perhaps that? Possibly not. No, but at the end of the day, I'm not going to criticise him for that. But my fear, and I said it to you on here, was that if we mismanage this situation, and I didn't really expect Rodgers to go when he did, I have to be honest, because I was like, surely he'll stick it out. But then you look at the situation and how it's unfolded since. One of the most pertinent tweets, and apologies, I can't remember the name of the poster, but one of the most pertinent tweets I saw on Sunday night was, maybe this is why Brendan Rodgers hasn't come back to Dermot Desmond's statement, because he doesn't need to. So it's just let this play out and let us all see behind the curtain and the screaming and the wailing and the fire behind the curtain. And that's what we're now seeing. A very, very dysfunctional football club with a guy at the helm that I just have an immense dislike for. Michael Nicholson has found his voice all of a sudden, and I think it would have been better if he'd have just stayed silent, to be honest.
Well, I'm going to move on to that. Now, by the way, I'm just checking, well, JP, it's like whenever I fall out because of the fact that I'm in Fife, we only have 4 TV channels and we're still trying to get Wi-Fi on our pagers through here, JP, and you just keep talking. So when you do one of them, I'm having a look for updates to see if this has been confirmed. I've got one source telling me, a very good source, telling me that there is indeed meetings ongoing at Celtic Park, a different source from Peter Martin. So this is all very interesting, but I've got to say, JP, moving on to the Michael Nicholson thing, I'm going to share a wee image here today. So, by the way, I think it's important to say that we opened up by speaking about Peter Lawwell, and people think you've got an agenda or it's something personal, JP. It's not. It never is. It never is. It wasn't personal when Celtic were hurtling towards losing the league and losing the 10, when I've eventually, and I wasn't the first one, I eventually said, I think we need to change the manager. That wasn't personal against Neil Lennon either. Celtic, first and foremost, and every single thing underneath that can unfortunately fall by the wayside, and that does involve individuals. I'm like yourself. I don't agree with any kind of intimidation. I've been put under that myself, not the Celtic fans. It's no good. It's not nice. It's not comfortable. It's your home address. It's your haven. It's your family. It's a different world, isn't it? And it should be kept away from anything you do in your day-to-day job. Anything you do, you should not be targeted. It's not right. I don't agree with that. I don't know the details of it. I don't know the extent of it. But what I would say, JP, Michael Nicholson, who until recently I thought was a mute, has started coming out and speaking on the official club vehicle, Celtic TV, the Celtic YouTube channel. And he takes, as did Peter Lawwell before him, and as did Brian Wilson after him, the opportunity to have a swipe at Celtic fans. Is your PR officer on holiday or something? I mean, who thinks it's a good idea, right, to announce the resignation of Peter Lawwell 2 hours before a game, which is a must-win game, by the way? Every game right now is a must-win game. Oh, you know what? We'll just throw a cat amongst the pigeons, right? And we'll tell you that your chairman's walking out. Not only that, he's walking out because of you, because of the fans, not because of anything he's done wrong or anybody else on the board has done wrong. It's because of you, the fans. You have intimidated him out the football club. And you release that 2 hours before the game, JP. Who thought that was a good idea?
If there was any thought process by them to think that by framing it, or just by releasing it, that they were somehow going to galvanise the support over this. I mean, the support are going to read what is said, they're going to listen to what is said, and they're going to see how it's framed. And it couldn't have done less than that. It was the worst thing that they could have done, I think. There was a lot of people online going, yep, okay, 2 more to go or whatever and everything else. But the way that it was done and the way that it was put out, if it had been done differently, perhaps, but it was almost like, we're going to give you what you want, but we're going to have a go at you at the same time. That's what it felt like to me. As I was reading that, I was just like, well, this is just further distancing us from you. And well, if those discussions conclude today with Wilfried Nancy to end his short spell as manager, then I'm afraid there's going to be a couple other people that need to go as well.
Well, see, the thing with that as well, though, is with regards to this particular development today, JP, if he was to go, I think it's the right decision. That's my opinion. Why do I think it's the right decision? I don't think he's got the buy-in from the players. Now, there's one thing having the buy-in and the connection, like, you know, between fan base and coach. That might have come, you know, a massive victory.
That's what I was saying about, if you took everything that he said and his ideals and what he's trying to implement and put it in a different period of time, i.e. pre-season, like say Brendan, right, parallel universe time, Kev Graham, quote unquote, you get to the end of the season, Brendan Rodgers gets us. I mean, we would have had to have had decent recruitment in the summer for this to happen, by the way. I'm not suggesting that had Brendan Rodgers stayed, with the mood that was in the camp, with the Honda Civic Ferrari quote. But I mean, ultimately, we are seeing that we haven't got a Ferrari. You know, we definitely haven't got a Ferrari. And the Stephen Robinson banged the drum about the financial disparity. The way that we've spent money has been bad. We've spent it badly. Like, it doesn't mean to say that because we've got like an Arnie Engels in midfield for 11 million, an Austin Trusty in defence for 6 million, and a Sebastian Tenecti up front for 5.5 million. Look at the rest of the team and what was put together on Sunday to make a team. If that money had been redistributed around the team and we'd still failed, then okay, fair enough. But that's like looking at your wardrobe and having a Stone Island hoodie and, you know, a Belstaff jacket, but then the rest of your wardrobe's kind of Zara and H&M and everything like that. It's like you can have a couple of amazing garments, but it's not. It doesn't necessarily mean to say you're always going to look cool as anything when you go out.
It reminds me of Alan Thompson. Alan Thompson said that wee Bobby Petter used to be a flash dresser. You used to call him Bobby Prada, but since the divorce, it's Bobby Zara. And I felt a wee bit sorry for Bobby Petter because, you know, he's one of the guys that they'll take a wee dig at Bobby, but he's one of the nicest guys that I know in the world of Celtic. I think he's brilliant. But in relation to this, I'm keeping a wee eye on it, JP. I'm keeping an eye on the Twitter feeds. If anybody hears anything before we do, let us know. We're not like a baying mob that's looking for someone to lose their job because we're nasty people. Celtic is more important than any individual, and I'm going to keep coming back to that, JP. I said last night after the game, and can I just say last night, the level of frustration among the Celtic fans who tuned in was palpable, JP. And I do think you get a good cross section. I mean, we went live 4 times yesterday. 4 times. So we had the 12:30, the pre-match, the post-match, and the half-time. And you get a good cross-section of opinion. You get a good cross-section. I mean, last night's stream was watched by 40,000 people on YouTube and 30,000 on Twitter. I mean, you're getting a lot of people tuning in, and not everybody comments, but from those who do, you're getting a sense of somewhere in the camp on that. You know, you've got to give them a window, got to give them a transfer window. You can't judge them after 4 games. Whereas I think the majority of people are like, this just isn't working. And I'm going to go back to something I said before. What's more important than even what we think, of course, as fans, and fans are more important than anybody else in a football club, if you ask me, is if the players don't buy in, JP. Now, I'm not going to call it player power, but if the players don't buy into what the manager's trying to sell them, it ain't ever going to work, because Nancy can't bring an entire new team in one window. You know, all the guys that we spoke about, the makeup of your squad, the metronomes, the guys that are coming in looking for a move, those that are maybe at the end of their career like Kasper Schmeichel or Joe Hart before them, there's a makeup of that squad. And if that squad, the nucleus of that squad, doesn't buy into the manager and his vision, you will never, ever turn that round, I'm afraid. And I think there might be an element of that. And what am I basing it on? I'm basing it on things like the wee huddle in the cup final on the pitch. I think you would have noticed that in the first half.
Well, my view was terrible, but I probably didn't notice that actually, because I was right down the bottom where the Green Brigade should have been, but weren't. So I was right down the bottom of the Celtic end behind the goals. So, but I was aware that had happened, yeah.
And when that happens, it's almost like you're going rogue a wee bit. Now, there's an element of me thinking, right, what level of professionalism is there when the players are going rogue against the manager? Is that right? It must have taken a lot for someone like Callum McGregor to be part of that, JP. Because, I mean, he's a captain who I think I trust, you know, to the nth degree. He's a guy that conducts himself in a way that I think is fitting in the name of Celtic Football Club. He wouldn't do anything to damage a club, is what I'm trying to say.
I don't believe so, no. But just going back to finish off before I went off on my tangent about Stone Island hoodies and Burberry jackets or Belstaff jackets, the point is that, like, if we got to the end of the season with Brendan Rodgers and he walks out, as I really, really wanted him to do at the end of the season, you know, I was thinking, right, he said a million times, I'll be here 150% or whatever till the end of the season. But he felt so uncomfortable and so raging probably at the way that he'd been pushed into basically criticising the players. He was pushed into that Honda Civic Ferrari comment. Sometimes I say things on here that I'll be like, I don't even remember. Do you know what I mean? I'm pretty sure he's a lot more calculated than that, given that he's a very far more intelligent man than I am, and you know, he'll earn more money in 5 minutes than I will in probably a couple of years. But the point is that had we got to the end of the season and Brendan Rodgers had done what he should have been able to do, had he been given the tools to do it in the summer, then that could have been a point where you are selling players that are at the end of their lifespan, not sounds terrible, not lifespan, but at the end of their time at the club, to move on, whether it's Dyson Maeda, whether it's Rio Hatate, whether it's Cameron Carter-Vickers. You're selling these players at that point where they're like, right, we've done our bit here, it's time to move on, we'd like to go and earn 3 times what we're earning here in a far less stressful environment. And then that would have been the point that you could have looked to do something like this. But to do it mid-season off the back of a really...
That siren's 5 minutes late, mate.
That's a fire engine, to do it off the back of an 8-game stint with Martin O'Neill, where you don't even really know, and nothing has really been said by the players. They've maybe been told to keep it in-house, but the bond that they created in that time, not just with Martin O'Neill, but with Mark Fotheringham, with Sean Maloney, you saw the way the players were with them at the end of games. Like, look at Rotterdam away, you know, like everyone's like jumping about, hugging each other and everything else. And I know wins bring that, but there was definitely, I don't know for sure, but seemed to be a bond there. And then almost like a light switch, it's like, he's gone, new light switch on in the morning, and it's a whole new range of people. And I just think mentally for a player, never mind before you even get to talking about tactics or being asked to play a different way or anything like that, I think mentally and psychologically for players, kind of almost feels like when you used to get a substitute teacher or something, and they'd come in and they'd be like, oh, what? This class is actually brilliant. Like, I really enjoy this class again. And then the substitute teacher goes, and then you either get a new teacher permanently, or your old teacher comes back and you're like, oh, I hate geography again. Like, like that.
JP, you're spot on though, because it does come down to personalities. You know, in the world of music, the music industry that you're in the corporate world. But when it comes to top level athletes, it comes to their personalities. And I was listening this morning, I don't know what your thoughts are on the individual, but Tim Sherwood was talking about that. He said, you know, it doesn't matter how well qualified you are or how hip you are with your new terminology, etc. If you can't tap in to the players you're working with, it doesn't matter how good you are, they'll switch off. So I think that was Martin O'Neill's key to his success. He was able to tap in to the players on a human level, because we keep thinking about footballers at this level is almost robotic, JP, but they can down tools, they can go in the huff, they can, you know, they can feel anxious.
Arne Engels' body language as he came off the park, because he walked right in front of us, because he was about to take a corner on Sunday, and then it was taken off, and he walked along in front of us, and the guy looked like he had the weight of the world on his shoulders. It was, you know, and people will be like, oh, boo-hoo, cry me a river, he's on 20 grand a week or whatever. And I get that, but he's still a professional, he's still got pride. And there's been plenty moments in his time at Celtic, plenty, where you can come on here and say Arne Engels is the best man in the park, or what a player Engels, you know, is. But it all depends on what's playing around about you. And just in the same way as Anthony Ralston in a team with quite a lot of Stone Island jumpers could perform a lot better. Do you know what I mean? It's not like if you're suddenly putting all the onus on fringe players or players that haven't really been over the course and distance and played every single game in a season, then, you know, you're relying on them too much. And then obviously if you're playing them out of position, I felt kind of sorry for Yang, actually, because Yang had sort of come into a bit of a groove, had slightly proved me wrong. I'm not saying it was the answer, but like to get a goal like he did in Rotterdam and to play the way he did, and you could see Martin O'Neill had maybe developed a bit of a bond with him, and then all of a sudden he's playing as a wing back, and you're like, what? I mean, give the guy a chance, you know.
You know, when I look at the makeup of the Celtic team, I think it lacks identity. I really do. I think there's a lack of team cohesion. If I was to say to you, how does this team play? If I was to say to you, how did Ange's team play, JP? I think you could pretty much describe it to me. What kind of team did Neil Lennon have first time round? I think you could describe that to me. But I think that there's a lack of identity with this particular crop of players. And by the way, that's not all on Nancy. I think that
Ralston fitted in Ange Postecoglou's teams.
And he fitted really effectively, didn't he? He really did. And then you look at him now, there was a moment where he's John Smithed it up in the air.
Well, that was horrendous. That was absolutely horrendous. And I didn't like feel like having a go at him for that or anything like that. It was just kind of like, well, that was where he'd got to. He just didn't have it was almost like malfunctioning. And I know he's not a robot, but it was almost like I don't know what to do here. I don't know what to do. I'm not comfortable in this style of play or whatever.
Yeah, it was almost like a frustration, I think, had crept in as well, because there's one thing about Tony Ralston, you can rate him or not. He's a professional. He's a real professional. You know what I mean? He always turns up. He might not always be great, but it's that 100% that not every player brings to the table. He always will. And it was almost a frustration had crept in, and it was very slack. And we're just at that point looking at the game, looking at the way that it's going and the flow of it, and thinking, this is the momentum's being lost here. The game is running away from us. And if we can't make 5-yard passes, you know, again, people are saying to me, it's not Nancy's fault you can't make a 5-yard pass. Sometimes that's symptomatic of the bigger situation that you're in, is that you can't make a pass that you would normally make naturally, that you make hundreds of times every single week at training. So I'm going to bring this in because a lot of people are now talking about who replaces the new manager, if indeed he leaves Celtic Park today. Cel, I know what you mean by Primarks. Yes, I've been tagged into Primark so often on social media that they started following me, JP, because people think that's where I get my clobber. By the way, if they want to sponsor the show, get in touch. I am reading compensation has been agreed, says Joseph McGonigal. And I'll tell you one thing, and I said this after the game, JP, he looked absolutely empty last night.
Yeah.
This is before the pressers, right? Where obviously the camera zooms in on him. I don't know how, but he ended up with a ball. He just kind of put that away, and it was head down, like literally head down. The body language was of a man defeated. Mm-hmm. It looked like a man defeated. So this isn't coming as much of a surprise. Eve Cat Mum, hope you guys can stay on Acsom. JP, you may well have to nip away at 1:30. I'm not sure if you're on a tight schedule, but we will stay on to try and get through this.
Does she just mean like permanently or today? We're just going to like stop talking about. I mean, I did say last week that if Michael Nicholson and specifically Chris Mackay, now I've seen that picture of him filming the Celtic fans. I mean, if they're still in play in situ in May, they're not getting £800 from me. And if that happens, then yeah, I won't be on Acsom because I don't feel like I have the same voice that I do with a season ticket. It's just my personal opinion. I'm not saying that anybody that doesn't have a season ticket that speaks in Acsom isn't a Celtic supporter. I just think I wouldn't want the whole, oh, he doesn't even go to the games part.
I get a lot of that myself, JP. It's like the final thing they can give you a dig about. I mean, I don't feel like I need to justify it. I'm working. And when I'm not working during the games, because this is my day-to-day,
you still have a season ticket, so yeah,
I do, and I'll never give it up, JP. I mean, I understand what you're saying there, right? And people will criticise me for never giving it up. So you can never win. They criticise you for having it and not being able to go, or they'll criticise you for not giving it up. I'll tell you one thing though, I found bizarre was on the way home from the League Cup final, listening into Acsom, and Liam Carrigan, who is based in Japan, and Sean Connolly, based in Australia, were given a hard time because they weren't at the game. 3 people who were at the game, 4 in this picture, who were at the game last night. We're on the left-hand side. You have Michael Nicholson. He's no shrugging, but his hands are in his pocket. Then you've got Chris Mackay. For anyone who doesn't know, Chris Mackay is the Chief Financial Officer of Celtic Football Club. Next to him is the interim chairman, Brian Wilson, who wrote the history of the football club, official history, and its updated version. He used to write speeches for Bobby Gillespie's dad as well when he was a Labour candidate. And behind him, Brian Wilson, aye. Brian Wilson brought Pink Floyd to Dunoon as well. You and Martin will know all about that in the comments. Mark Hargreaves behind him. Is he now the head of security? I'm not quite sure what his position is, but that's Mark Hargreaves. But the issue with this is the attitude, the demeanour, and the arrogance of Chris Mackay. Now, we're talking about personal occurrences where you've met an individual and what kind of vibe you got. And I've even expanded on my Peter Lawwell one. I ended up in the boardroom one day through a friend of mine, and it was me and my old man. My old man had just been diagnosed with cancer, and he was having a hard time. And we were standing in the corner, and Peter Lawwell came over, and he spent about 15 minutes with us. And when he went away, I was thinking to myself, my mate has told him that my old man's not feeling well. My old man's followed Celtic since the 70s. And he's came over and made an effort. And I spoke to my pal who obviously sorted it out for me later on, and I ran this past him, JP. And he was like, nah, I never mentioned anything. That's just Peter being Peter, working the room, speaking to people. And he was brand new. Anyway, that was then, this is now. Chris Mackay. This man here, I've met once, and it was in that meeting that I referenced before with the CEO. And I came out of the meeting and I gave you my opinion, JP. My opinion was these people are not capable of negotiating deals all over the world to bring in the best quality players for Celtic. Yet they sat at that table that night and said, I'm the contracts guy, he's the money guy. Who else would you want to negotiate for your football club? Well, no, you two guys. Absolutely no. He answered the one and only question that I asked on the night with a sneering reply, Chris Mackay. Sneering reply. And, first impressions count and all the rest of it. The level of arrogance to flip out your phone like this, to start filming Celtic supporters and give them a wave or a thumbs up, JP, as if to say, look at me on my £500,000 a year. Look at you guys. Yous are plebs. Look at yous travelling up to Dundee on a cold Wednesday night. Check you out. I'm going in for my prawn sandwich.
Something that I couldn't afford to do last night, by the way.
We spoke about it before again, JP. That these people don't know what it feels like not to be able to afford to go to a Celtic game. They don't. They absolutely don't. And to show that level of arrogance, for me, hunt him. He needs to go. He needs to go. That's a massive change. These guys are not capable of running our football club. They don't have the connection with the fan base, JP.
It doesn't look like he's getting the seal of approval from whatever role Mark. Is it Mark Hargraves or Hargreaves?
Hargreaves, I think it maybe head of security, but he's looking at that going, wait a minute, that's inflammatory. Why are you doing that?
100%. He's looking at that going, what the hell? He's probably going, a picture tells 1,000 words. He's the only one doing that. Brian Wilson's looking dead ahead, probably fully aware of what he's doing. Isn't he? I would hope he's not laughing and joking. And if he does out with this picture, then I'll stand corrected. But that picture of your man behind looking at that looks to me like somebody going, what the hell are you doing?
Because he can see on the screen, he knows he's filming Celtic.
That's maniac behaviour. Yeah, thumbs up for that.
Thumbs up. You know what, JP? Sometimes it takes one moment, right? One moment, one decision, and that's you done. That's Chris Mackay's moment for me. There you go.
100%.
I don't want this individual negotiating on behalf of Celtic in the January transfer window.
No, absolutely not. Very, very deeply concerning. I just as Johnny Marr said about this, the proposed Smiths reunion, the vibe's not right. That's what he said. The vibe's not right. He said it on the whatever the thing is with Ian Wright and Roy Keane, Gary Neville. I forget it. There's so
overlap.
Many overlap. Yeah. He said it on that when they asked him. He said, "Vibe's not right. The vibe's not right." And then the vibe is not right at Celtic all throughout the club. I felt it when I sat down in my seat at Hampden on Sunday. I was just like, we're not winning this today. I saw their tifo and I was like, we've not even got a tifo because the people that put the tifos together aren't allowed into this game, which is an absolute nonsense. And I honestly had that vibe, and I was just like, we are fragmented as a support, and the singing wasn't from the gut. The singing was more performatory on Sunday. It wasn't from the gut. It was really, really tough to be there, to be honest, because when you know that you're beat before the bell goes or the whistle goes, that's kind of a hard thing to take. And then within 2 minutes, we're a goal down right in front of me. I had the worst view in the house of it, and that's a very telling a telling thing. And credit to Stephen Robinson for probably the easiest win. I mean, I texted my mate Smiley. He organises the football game that I play on a Tuesday, and he's a huge St Mirren fan, lifelong St Mirren fan, and north of 50. So he's not seen too many days and nights like that. And I texted him and I said, "Congratulations, enjoy your win. We're a broken club, and broken clubs don't win don't win trophies, you know."
And when you have a Celtic board or people that are at this level, JP, where they have lost that connection with the Celtic supporters, then you have an issue. I mean, we uploaded unseen archive footage of Terry Cassidy appearing at a Celtic rally in front of 300 Celtic fans who, by the way, knew that the club was spiralling out of control on a financial level with absolutely no hope of being able to meet the recommendations of the Taylor report with the stadium. And at that stage, with Rangers winning league title after league title and spending loads and loads of money, we had no business acumen. Terry Cassidy, Celtic's first ever CEO, faced up to that. He went to Shettleston Halls, JP, and he sat on that stage and answered every single question. Everyone. Go and watch it back. It's on a channel, right? Maybe not a very nice guy. Who knows? I never ever had the opportunity to meet Terry Cassidy. But I tell you what, he absolutely stood up to it. He then gave an interview to the fanzines. I've got them over there. He gave the interview. So he's speaking to fans. He's speaking to fan media. JP, this crowd that we've got at the moment have completely lost touch with what it means to be a Celtic supporter, right? Now, I know Michael Nicholson was in a season ticket holder. Chris Mackay, I think, was a season ticket holder. I know all this, right? But they've lost touch with what it means to support Celtic. It's a us and them mentality. If I go back to the interview we did a few months ago with Willie Hockey, and he goes, "Us v them should never exist at Celtic." It stuck with me because there's no unity and there's no togetherness, JP.
As somebody else said, and I forget who it was, so forgive me, I've listened to a lot of stuff selectively, I have to say. I don't care if these guys are Celtic supporters or not. I'd rather have the best people available for the jobs, and it probably, as an example of somebody who came into Celtic and had one of the most powerful positions at the club in 1997, and Wim Jansen, who had little or no knowledge of Celtic apart from the fact that he played against them in the final. But I'm not saying that he came to Celtic because he had some sort of dewy-eyed nostalgia for the fact that he'd beaten a Celtic team in the European Cup final with his Feyenoord team. He came in and just knew he had a job to do and did it to the best of his abilities, and won us a very, very important league title in the context of everything. So that is that sort of what's the word? That sort of what is the word? That sort of thinking, that rationale is what I would apply to every position at the club. You don't need to point to, "Oh, I was at such and such a game," and blah blah blah. Leave that to us. We're the fans. Like, we can talk about that. Just do your job and do it well. And if you're not good enough to do your job, I don't care if you're a Celtic supporter or not. Leave your position. The eye-watering amounts of money that these guys are getting would probably indicate to you that that's why they've not left the position, and why they probably feel like they've got a job for life, or a job until they're told that they've not got it anymore, because they're certainly not going to walk away on their own volition of a salary that is north of £600,000-800,000 a year. Or, I mean, am I right in saying that? Is that what they're on?
Well, Chris Mackay's on $500,000, and that's with bonuses. Michael Nicholson will clear 900 grand. I don't know what that is after tax, but he'll not get paid that anywhere else. Ever again. Nowhere else, JP. I've got a Celtic handbook. It's not one of the wee green ones. It's a directory. You could pick them up in the Celtic Superstore back in the 90s. This is from 1995. I'll need to dig it out. It's in a bundle somewhere. And you look through it, and what it actually does, it lists every single member of staff, bizarrely enough, with a wee picture and who they are. And so many of them are still there. So many of them are still at the club. So how can you transition into a different era? And we have transitioned into a different era since then, because in 1995, the Champions League had only been going for 2 seasons, JP, and we'd never qualified for it. So how can you translate your skills into a new era if you don't develop your staff, if you don't develop the people who are employed at the football club? And that's what happens. They get into a clique mentality. They get very comfortable. Then what happens is, sorry guys, the Don Mackay klaxon's coming on now. Somebody like Don Mackay comes in with a fresh pair of eyes and a new perspective and say, why are you doing it like this? Because we've always done it like this, Don. Don't rock the boat. And if you rock the boat, you're out.
By the way, on that note, there's a thing that happens every year in December. It's like a promoters meeting, or lunch, should I say, with all the sort of big hitters in the music industry. So it's like you've got people from the company I work for, you've got people from Regular Music, from Triple G, which is the kind of rock promoter. You've got just different aspects, like the sort of the main players in that game that are booking the gigs. And there's always usually a picture that Donald McLeod as well, that owns the garage. Really good guy, Donald. A maniac, but a good guy. And he put on Prince at the garage, actually. He shelled out.
You've told me that story.
He shelled out the 10 or 15 grand cash that Prince wanted to play an after show at the garage. But there's usually a picture released. And this year, guess who was in the picture? With lots of people I know, by the way.
Was it Dominic?
Yeah.
Dominic?
He's standing, and there's a picture of them all posing at like a sort of table, and he's there. And I'm like, what I would have given to have been at that meeting. I don't care about anybody else that's there. I would have just been like, I need to sit next to that guy because I want to bend his ear. I want to know what happened.
Discussion time will come. I think discussion time will come. It will come with Don Mackay. It will come with Brendan Rodgers. And then what tends to happen is you finally get little missing pieces of the jigsaw, don't you? And then you can start talking about it with a wee bit more authority because you have the information, JP.
I should say, by the way, I didn't say he is the CEO of the Hydro, or the SEC complex. So your Armadillo, your SEC and your Hydro, that is the position that Dominic Mackay holds now. And that's why he was in that picture with people that I know. Isn't
that, in terms of football, one of the biggest complexes of its kind in Europe?
Yeah.
So, I mean, it's a lofty title. This is the thing. When Don Mackay came to Celtic, he had a track record, and he has left Celtic and continued to build his career as a CEO.
Yeah, his 72 days in charge or whatever it was hasn't affected him being able to get other jobs, because he held a position prior to the SEC role. I forget what it was, but it might have been back in rugby. Forgive me, I can't remember. But yeah, it didn't damage him. And if Wilfried Nancy is to leave Celtic today, I don't doubt that he will get another job and probably go on to be successful in it, because he may well arrive in a club at the right time with the right people. And he'd done a good job where he was. There's no doubt about it. You can't look at the optics now and say, oh, well, we've hired this guy that was managing, some team at the very bottom end of a league somewhere. He was successful there, like he was coach of the year as far as I know.
Yeah.
Worked under Thierry Henry, then got Thierry Henry's job. I'm not having it that I'm sure that will fuel him if he does leave to fire him into better times for himself.
I think also you have to look at how we got here. You've got to look at what process did Celtic follow to bring Wilfried Nancy to the football club. Who's going to be held responsible for that process being an absolute bin fire? Because 4 games and he's out shows that the recruitment was wrong. Recruitment. It constantly comes back to recruitment, JP. If you don't recruit the right, and after a period of time, before you know it, the quality that you did have is gone. So
you've got a 6-minute Celtic TV interview between Michael Nicholson and Jerry McCulloch where he says Wilfried Nancy's name about 45 times. So there's the evidence, Your Honour. He's put his name to that. He was our number one candidate. We've done our homework. This, that, and the next thing. You've got to think the question would have been asked. It's not as if he just arrived off the plane from America and went, oh, by the way, I'm going to change everything and this is all going to be different. And everything I said to you in the interview was actually, I was just trying to get the job. Like, surely they would have said to him, surely they would have said to him, what do you plan to do in terms of your playing style? And he'd be like, well, I'm just going to introduce the playing style I've been playing with in my previous positions. And they'd be like, okay, you sure about that? Yeah, and there we are.
Right, so there's other people culpable here. This is the thing. There has to be a knock-on. If Nancy loses his job today, there has to be a knock-on. You've got to look at, right, who signed this off? Because you're not capable of doing your job either. This thing did concern me, and at first I thought it was a parody. I was close when I was a player to sign with Carlisle, so I know exactly who I am. I know that the Scottish football, this is physical. There's, it's just embarrassing. So he's used Carlisle as an example of how he knows Scottish football. And I just think he's in the wrong movie, JP. That's what you've said at the very top of the show. If he's to go today, then Celtic need to lick our wounds, but we need to act fast. And the big question that's coming through in the comments section, JP, is what do we do? If Nancy leaves the football club, and I would expect the whole four of them, the whole management team to leave, what do we do, right? So at the moment, we currently have, as well as your kit guys and doctors and medical staff, you have got Stevie Woods and you've got Gavin Strachan. Who do you bring in? Who's the manager? Who's the first team coach? I mean, because there's this wee thing in my mind where it's like, just revert back to what we had before Nancy came in, right? So then you're wincing at that. We need something interim. Maloney, McManus, they're already at the football club. They're already here. They were part of that. So that's easy to shuffle them in. But they can't do it alone, can they?
Certainly can't, no. You would think that the obvious one would be Mark Fotheringham to come in on an interim basis. Whether or not that embraces the same juju that was there with Martin O'Neill, I don't know. I don't know. In terms of the way that they play, all the rest of it, you're still playing with the same players ultimately, and all the players are at different trajectories, as you've pointed out. I thought the first half, Dyson Maeda took his goal so well, looked so lively. He hits that header against the post last night, and you're just like, all right, well, that, as Chris Sutton said, maybe this really is not meant to be, because that's when the luck's really against you. I mean, he must have hit that from a yard out, and he was.
I know, and you're thinking it's all about the ricochet. It needs to, it's going in. It's momentum, it's energy. It's if things are going your way, GP, that goes in with all cheer. And we're having potentially a different. It might actually save the career in Nancy for a week or two longer. I don't know. But these are margins, and I get it. But all I'm getting this morning is, but we had a great first half. Having a great first half's not good enough at Celtic. I'm sorry, it's just not.
Well, the game lasts 90 minutes, doesn't it? So
exactly.
we can't piece together all those great first halves and get any points out of it, because you're still going to end up with zilch.
Wasn't he Roy the Rovers' character? Did he not play for Melchester? Ricochet.
You need to ask
Irish
International. Yeah, ask Mr. Haggerty that. He just got a new pair of gutties with Roy the Rovers.
You see that? Right, let's get some of these comments. And JP, just tell me when you need to leave, mate. I know you're a busy man, and we will set you free. I'm just hoping that we get an update. Maybe we're a wee bit premature with that in terms of an update, but it would be good to know. Well, discussions
are discussions. It doesn't mean to say the discussion's going to end with him leaving. It could be the discussion ends with him staying. I don't know. I mean, time will tell, obviously, and I would imagine we'll find out one way or another today in the full course of it.
What was it that Peter Martin actually said? Let's study this a wee bit more. I am led to believe that discussions are now taking place with Wilfried Nancy and the Celtic Board to end his 2-week reign.
I mean, he seemed quite taken aback when, was it Luke Shanley said last night?
He was good, by the way, Luke. I thought. Good questions.
I mean, it wasn't quite sort of Connie McLaughlin and Martin O'Neill where she was like bullying him into.
That was strange. That was
a
strange interview.
That was a weird one. No, I didn't think he went too hard on him. Like, he could have probably gone 2-footed on him, but I think it was probably a yellow card in terms of a tackle. But I think he spoke well as well, and he seemed to sort of be pretty defiant about the situation. But maybe that would be taken out of his hands. But again, you point to the people that appointed him in the first place.
You've got to recruitment and communication. We are failing time and time again at the basics, with regards to PR. That's part of obviously the communication stream from the club, JP. So to even release the information from Peter Lawwell with a swipe at the fans 2 hours before the game last night is a disaster. We're not learning from the poor communication or the poor recruitment. Who's your source? Lawwell? No, John. He doesn't answer his emails anymore, I'm afraid. Obviously, since the Quality Street Gang was 12 years ago, we're no longer in touch. Martin, what next? Martin O'Neill back. Celtic, the joke that keeps on giving. What are we looking for? Are we looking for somebody to steady the ship to the end of the season? People go, oh, you want a progressive manager, then you get one and then you sack him after 4 games. No. Progressive managers still need to get results, JP. It doesn't matter what bracket you put your management style in. You still need to get results. Mm-hmm. It's that simple. And if you don't have that from day one, you shouldn't be in the door.
Well, so you and I weren't born the last time that this set of results happened.
That's right. Was it March 78?
Apparently, according to last night, they delighted in telling us that more than once last night on the commentary.
And it was the season that Jock Stein was. I remember when Celtic sacked a manager in the 90s, and they said it's the first time a manager's ever been sacked in the history of the football club. Jock Stein was sacked. I spoke to a very, very close friend who actually took a picture of him. He was a photographer at the club at the time. Took a picture of him for his testimonial programme, I think the night he was sacked. And there was that picture of him with John Clark and Billy McNeil, and they're all shaking hands and all this kind of stuff. He's offered a job up the stairs working for Celtic Pools. What a disaster that was. I mean, this is Jock Stein. So here we go. Who replaces Nancy, says Paul. I think they're going to have to try and play it safe, Paul. They need a period of stability. We're going into a January transfer window. How short-term is that? Depends on how short-term the managerial appointment is. I think Sean Maloney will be part of it, JP. I think there is no doubt he will be part of this regime. But I think Sean needs a figurehead. I don't think he's a manager. I think he's a coach. He needs a figurehead. Who's the figurehead going to be? Is it going to be Martin O'Neill? Is it going to be... I'm now just thinking of people who are within that circle of, sorry to say it, Dermot Desmond's kind of circle, right? Because I don't think Nancy was a Desmond production. Who's in the Dermot Desmond circle? Martin O'Neill, dare I say, Neil Lennon and Paul Lambert. That's the type of guys that are in the Desmond camp. It might be somebody like that. I don't know, is my honest answer. Are there any of the names you would be unhappy with, JP?
I love Paul Lambert. I absolutely love Paul Lambert, but I don't think that would be the right appointment, in my opinion. Sean Maloney, it would make sense for him to be part of it in some way, but like you said, he probably does need somebody, with a maybe a louder voice. Whose theory was it the other day? Was it Liam that said about, this has all just been a charade, and we've just brought in somebody to be like, oh, this is who you wanted, and then Desmond's going to be like, well, here's what I'm going to give you. Like this.
And he's in that camp as well. Forgot.
Yeah.
No, I remember that theory. I don't think.
I'll put in place who I want. As a result of this. I mean, that it does seem a little bit kind of.
I think that will happen, but I don't think it's been planned. I don't think it's been manipulated.
Surely not. Why would you go through all this and cost yourself money and compensation and just the sheer optic of it all? As well as that, you mentioned the other day that he's starting to draw criticism in Irish press and whatnot because this all happening isn't happening quietly. This is all quite loud at the moment. There's no escaping it. So we are inextricably linked with Ireland, whether people like that or not. And Irish writers, sports writers will talk, whether or not they feel like they've got a gun to the back of their head or not. They will speak because there's free reign to speak about this, and there will be criticism levelled at him. So he's going to have to suck that up and take it, because if he takes the plaudits when they come and says point to the trophies and all the rest of it, show me how many trophies we've won, then he's got to take this on the chin as well, because he's at the helm. You can't have it. You've got to have it both ways, so to speak. Sorry, I'm running out of gas here, Paul. I didn't have a very good night's sleep, so apologies if I'm kind of rambling.
Not at all. But if you need to go, just let me know. I'm kind of hoping that we get some kind of an update. I don't know if we will in relation to this, because it's one of the ones, JP, that when I came on, that this was my take. I mean, there you go. The title of Celtic Board must admit their own failings and make changes now. And I don't just mean with Nancy, by the way. I also think we need to have a period of reflection as a football club, JP, before we can progress, because this picture that I've just shared there with Mackay, the optics of that are absolutely dreadful. These people don't care for the JP, and I'm not blowing smoke up your backside, right? But see guys like you that more or less do whatever you can to watch Celtic, and I'm talking in Europe, away from home. I spoke to you yesterday. You said I just didn't have the dough. It's the time of year. It's Christmas. I can't go up to Dundee tonight to go to the game. And you've got this guy, £500,000. How many season tickets is that to pay his salary? And that's the way that, with absolute contempt dripping from him, that's the way that he treats the Celtic fan base. So there's big changes required. Nancy might be a sacrificial lamb to the slaughter in this whole big charade that these guys are playing. But they won't last. You and I will be Celtic fans when they're all gone, JP. That's
100%, 100%. And you know, there was an element of me at full time on Sunday to be like, well, you reap what you sow, and you didn't back the manager in summer. Whether people can dress up the arguments about that, they can call Brendan Rodgers a rat and everything else. The facts of the matter are, we are sitting here in December, and I said to you last week that I've never been so deflated as a Celtic fan as the day after the transfer window closed, because we were not where we should have been as a result of that window. And the fact that we went through the whole summer waiting and listening to Brendan Rodgers saying over and over again in different ways, yeah, we need to strengthen, you know, blah, 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 when are the signings coming? And they've left us in this situation. And it's probably worse than I could have imagined, if I'm being honest, because of the injuries that have piled up on top. You know, even the guy that we signed a day after the transfer window closed on a free transfer, he's injured. I mean, is it any surprise that he's not able to play week in, week out, having never done it for what, 2-3 years? Like, I mean, there is no, and that was a throw of the dice from Brendan Rodgers, probably because he's probably been presented with that list and been like, well, I know Kells, I'll get him in and see if I can get him up and running again.
Absolutely. Now, I'm going to let you go, JP, because you've ran 30 minutes over your time, and it's just been one of the days that's ran away from us because of the developments. I'm going to stick it around because I've got about 20 different comments saved that I want to bring up, and I'll just speak directly to them. So, JP, thank you once again, and hopefully I can see you next week. And we might have a wee bounce in our step next week.
Oh, it's Christmas Day next week, Paul, so I might...
Thursday. See what happens, JP. I get so focused on Acsom.
I might have other things on.
Are you sure? I might just do this. I don't know. I might not get on the Wi-Fi on Christmas Day. It's normally at a premium. Listen, I completely forgot about that next week. How sad is that? Thanks everybody for getting involved. I'm going to stick around and answer a few of the comments. JP Mason, enjoy your Christmas. Hopefully I'll catch up with you soon, my friend. Thank you.
Cheers, Paul.
So there we go, JP Mason and myself talking all things Celtic. We came on with the view that big changes are required at Celtic Football Club. And then, of course, just as a summary for anyone who's jumped on, we've got about 9,000 on live at the moment across various different platforms. There was breaking news, and it was broken by Peter Martin from the PLZ channel. Peter, met Peter a few times. Celtic fan, Peter. He's a Celtic fan who doesn't mind criticising those at the club not doing their job well, so he's balanced. I am led to believe that discussions are now taking place with Wilfried Nancy and the Celtic Board to end his 2-week reign as Celtic manager. At this stage, all you can do is make sure that it's coming from Peter's genuine account, which it is. So let us know in the comment section. This is all happening live. What do I do in a situation like this? I open up Celtic News now and I look for breaking news, and it's all relating to that tweet from Peter Martin. And it looks as though he may be leaving Celtic after just 4 games in charge. Now, on the surface of that, you look at that and think, what a disaster of a manager. How about what a disaster of an appointment? Because then that takes a lot of that onus away from the individual who's been appointed, and it then starts looking at those who were responsible. And I want to talk about that for a few minutes more. Yes, I will definitely be able to celebrate Christmas next Thursday. I just completely forgot about it. Bah humbug indeed, Chris. There you go. Maybe I should go shopping this weekend. What do you reckon? Here we go. Few starred comments. Going to bring up Stacey Easton. Thank you for supporting the channel. Stacey, thanks for everybody for supporting the channel as you do. Tisdale, Paul Tisdale. Where are we with Paul Tisdale? I have absolutely no faith whatsoever. Enda McGurk. No faith whatsoever in Paul Tisdale at this football club. I put him on the thumbnail for a reason. The guy is 20,000 leagues under the sea out of his depth. He should never have been at Celtic Park. The circumstances around him getting here are absolutely questionable. He needs to go as well. His recruitment of players has been shambolic. His recruitment of a manager has been even worse. Paul Tisdale must leave the building. Absolutely. That's huge news if true, says Tim Simpson. Yes, it is, Tim. Because what I said after the game last night is if Nancy does not leave this football club, we're not winning the league. Now, there's no guarantee we're going to win the league if we bring somebody else in, but I can tell you we're not winning it with Nancy at the helm. That's my take. What's yours? Mark E., fan of the fall, perhaps? Aye, it's cowardly, targeting people in their personal lives. I agree with you, Mark. Absolutely. You can have a balanced debate. You can go toe-to-toe. You can even argue passionately. And the emotion levels can be raised, but you don't cross the line. You do not attack anyone. You don't intimidate anyone. I've had it. I've had it from Rangers fans. All my personal details were published on Follow fans forum, and then lots of incorrect and inaccurate information, absolute lies were then printed or published on that same forum. I had to take the first stages of legal action to have it removed. I had to get CCTV installed at my property because people were turning up at my house with my young family inside. That's the kind of stuff that happens when people lose control. And unfortunately, I had to take action. So yeah, I do agree with you. Targeting people in their personal lives is completely off the table. We don't do that. We don't do that as human beings. We don't do it as Celtic supporters either. John Brown. We need a manager with more experience. It can't be another project. John, I agree with you. If ever there was a title to be given to this particular managerial appointment, the title would be project. And it's a project that has not worked. And it was a project we didn't have to undertake. This is a frustration, John, isn't it? Camden, NW1. For me, changing manager is about future, not winning this season. You want a manager I trust to start a rebuild. Right, I've got a view on this. I've got quite a strong view on this, Camden. I think you can do both, right? So I think that this is why the intricacies of recruitment are so fine in terms of their margins and how you can go wrong. We need to bring someone in, and we can't just give up the league. We just simply cannot give up the league. We're 6 points behind the leaders with the game in hand. We need somebody to come in and start getting the fundamentals correct. Start winning games. Now, I know when people say, start winning games of football, it's like you're a dinosaur. No, we've lost the basics here. We have lost the basics of what it means to be a successful football team and to win trophies, and it's winning games. People keep saying to me about Martin O'Neill's time, oh, well, we're rotten against Dundee. We're rotten against St Mirren. The performances were dropping off. The performances were always going to drop off because the momentum and the bounce that he gave that group of players who were demoralised after the departure of Brendan Rodgers started to wear off, and that's natural. Now, I think he was a good enough manager to lift them again. And then what starts to happen is you start to get some of your injured players back. And then what happens after that is you've got a January transfer window to refresh it. I think he would have done enough. I think he would have done enough without the wheels coming off. That's my view. We've also got Patrick Gibb. How many times has Wilfried Nancy's accent been mocked in this episode? 0, Patrick. We've never mocked his accent. I don't know why you're asking, but we wouldn't do that to anyone. We wouldn't mock anybody's accent. I'm from Fife. How on earth have I got any right to mock anybody's accent? Monty. Nicky Hyen. For me, I think Nicky Hyen was one of 4 in the shortlist, Monty, that we mentioned along with Kieran McKenna earlier on. I think Shettle Knutson was in there as well, along with Wilfried Nancy. We went for Nancy. It didn't work out. He may be leaving his position today. We don't know for sure yet. Nicky Hyen, maybe at the end of the season. I think we do need somebody to bridge us to the end of the season, Monty, because we are going to need a period of squad assessment before any manager can put their own stamp on this team. This team is fragile. I think we need familiarity. People might think that's a cop-out, But I honestly see a squad that is fragile in terms of their confidence, their approach to the game, their morale, all these things that are unquantifiable. I think you can see it in their body language. I think you can hear it when they're being interviewed, and you can definitely see it in their displays as well. So that is more of a reason than anything why I would go to the tried and tested. And that tried and tested is the coaching team that we had before, which is Fozzie, Sean Maloney, Steve McManus. Bring them back in. It was working, right? Bring them back in. So those three replaced the three coaching staff that Nancy had at the football club. The big question from there is, who's the figurehead? Who's the manager? Who's the manager? I named some people. I wasn't saying they should be, but we were trying to talk about a group of people who are close to Dermot Desmond. Let's be honest here. Dermot Desmond's going to make this decision. He's not, there's no way he's going to allow the same people, i.e. Paul Tisdale, to make an absolute pig's ear of, that's twice in 2 days I've almost swore on the show, and I never swear on the show, a pig's ear of the recruitment of a new manager. So who are in the group? I completely forgot about Gordon Strachan. He's in that group of people. Martin O'Neill, Neil Lennon, Paul Lambert. Neil Lennon's already in a job. That probably rules him out. He's obviously dealing with some personal issues at the moment as well, with the loss of his father. So I don't know if it's maybe the right time for Neil Lennon, but certainly you've got three other guys there who are very, very close to Dermot Desmond. Celtic follower, Nicholson, Mackay, Tisdale and Nancy need to go. I agree, 100%, because Nicholson and Mackay won't be able to negotiate their way out of a wet paper bag come January, and they're the guys doing the deals. Tisdale's the guy who is identifying the talent that they've got to do the deal on. It ain't happening. They've had enough opportunities to do this, and they've not done it well enough. Nancy, if he goes, I think is an indictment on the other three that you've mentioned. There we go. We bring up McMahon. If Nancy goes, it's because he's lost the dressing room. I think there's a lot to be said with this, McMahon. I think that there can be a confidence issue in the boardroom, but someone will always stand their ground, and that someone will be someone who signed off on a deal. So with regards to that, there might be a fractured boardroom in terms of the decision. I think when you look at the fan base, more and more people will be getting on the side of he needs to go. The longer it goes that he doesn't have a win under his belt, and it looks as though the opportunity of success this season is getting further and further away from us. But then it comes down to the players. So I think you've got three different factions here. You do have the fan base, you've got the boardroom, and then you've got your group of players. And the minute, and this does happen, and I'm not saying it's happened now, but it has happened in the past, the minute a captain goes to an executive and says something's wrong with the football department, at that point they have got to step up and take notice. So who knows? That kind of thing comes out after the event, doesn't it? Sometimes years after the event. Scott Brown, I love Scott Brown, Shadow. Absolutely love him. I spent a couple of hours with him 2 weeks ago at the live event, which was thoroughly enjoyable. I like his approach. I like his kind of vision of what he wants to do in the world of football. I do believe that a transition from the level he's managed it so far to Celtic would be a bridge too far at this moment in time. I think there's a position between where Scott Brown is and where Celtic are that he needs to go to a higher level, and he needs to prove himself there as a manager, not as a footballer. I mean, he's proven everybody wrong as a footballer. People that in his first couple of seasons at Celtic didn't think he was worth the money. He then became a legend, a living legend. I don't think it's from Ayr United to Celtic for Scott Brown. I think it's from Ayr probably to a team like Hibs and then on to Celtic. He's been linked, of course, with various jobs. He's been linked to the Dundee job. He's been linked to the St Johnstone job in the last 12 months. So, yeah, I'm not writing it off in the future, just not yet. We've also got what a job Martin would come back into. Yes, he would. But can I just remind you, Chilpill, that whilst he was still the manager of Celtic Football Club, we were in negotiations with Martin O'Neill in relation to doing an Acsom night, and he agreed to do it, and I wanted to launch it whilst he was still at the club. I didn't have to because I think it was the day or the day after he left. We launched that, and within 90 minutes, we had completely sold out with a waiting list of 2,000. We could have taken it to a much bigger venue. Imagine it happens whilst he's still in charge at Celtic. Wow. Simon Fideni, not saying he wouldn't work, but Nicky Hyen doesn't have a great CV either. And his last 12 games at Brugge. I think 3 wins were the reason why he left as well, Simon. Great to meet you a couple of weeks ago at the Fan Zone, Simon. Hopefully I will catch up with you again. Ways like us, Martin O'Neill, as they get on well together. The team certainly get on well together, the backroom team, and I think also he has a relationship, I'm not going to say with the board, but he certainly has a relationship with Dermot Desmond. So yes, there is harmony there if he comes back in. O'Neill just ordered a coffee, says Monty as well. Peter Martin would not put his name out there to be shot down. He must know something. Peter is a professional journalist stroke broadcaster. He knows how to deal with sources, information, networking, and he wouldn't, I agree, Robert, he wouldn't break that story unless he was able to have it checked out, and he's fact checked it as well. What else is happening? Let's have a look at Celtic news now, see if anything new is breaking on that story. It might be some time before it comes out. 67 Hail Hail are looking at how much it would cost to sack Wilfried Nancy as Celtic contract terms explained. Video Celts are running the story on the brink. Peter Martin on Wilfried Nancy exit talks. Celts are here, are saying Celtic Board set for Wilfried Nancy exit talks. Journalist confirms. So yeah, it's out there, and we can only run the show so long before we don't hear any new news. What do we do? Let us know. I've got the live comments coming up just now. Do you want to run for another 5-10 minutes, see if there's any update? Ladies and gents, we do have 9,500 of you on here at the moment, and if you want us to keep running with that, then I certainly will do it. So let us know in the comment section what you think. Do we not get a 14-day cooling off period, says Joseph Davidson? Unfortunately not in the world of football. Here we go, fan 1967 tick. Tisdale has to go now. His signings. Let's have a look at his signings. Yeah, I agree with you. He does have to go. I came into the show today before even knowing the update on Wilfried Nancy, and it was my take. It was my view, my opinion, which is only my opinion, that he shouldn't be able to survive this. Right, so let's look at the signings this season. Kieran Tierney came in. Obviously, it was a deal that was organised in January, and he came in from Arsenal. Was it a hit or a miss? Let us know in the comments. We then have Ross Doohan, never kicked the ball. He's basically replaced Scott Bain. Benjamin Negrin, 1.7. Goals and assists, pretty good. Very inconsistent, doesn't have any pace. Will he be part of the new manager's plans? Well, he certainly wasn't nearer the end of Martin O'Neill's time, was he? He wasn't getting a game until Nancy came back in, which led me to suggest that the handover that Nancy got was probably from Paul Tisdale, who had identified Negrin as a player. Callum Osmond came in, showed some real good promise actually under Brendan Rodgers, no, under Martin O'Neill rather. He didn't get a game under Brendan, and then he got injured. Then we have Hayato Inamura. The word is that Inamura and Yamada were signed without the say-so of Brendan Rodgers. Peter Lawwell, the chairman, didn't even know that they were going to be signed. Paul Tisdale flies over to Japan, does the deals, and they're all done without the knowledge of a couple of very important people, I would have suggested. Jamai Simpson-Pusey, one appearance. He was back on the bench last night. Again, maybe at Tisdale's say-so, trying to save face, trying to show that his signings have worked. Let's get him back in the squad. Far too late. Michel Ange Balakwisha, the most expensive signing at £5.2 million. Not kicked a ball for Celtic, let's be honest. We've also got Marcelo Sarachi. I like Sarachi, but he's injured, unfortunately. Sebastian Tunecki started off. First couple of games looked pretty good, falling off a cliff. And Kelechi Iheanacho, I think we can all guess that was a Brendan Rodgers signing. So how good has that record been, in your opinion? I don't think it's been good enough. The example that I use as your front line is Balakwisha, Tunecki and Yamada. £12 million, 2 goals and 2 assists. Is that good enough? Of course it's not. It's far from good enough. It's nowhere near being good enough. Now, the winter or the January transfer is another one that you can bring to Paul Tisdale because he was in the position as of the October. And let's have a look at the transfers that came in. We brought in Jeffrey Schlupp as a backup left back. Did a job. We didn't take the option on keeping him on. And we signed Jota, didn't we, for 9 or 10 million quid. again, a wee bit like Kieran Tierney, a returning player who we knew all about. No scouting would have been necessary. No data analysis would have been necessary. We knew Jota. We knew Kieran Tierney. So Paul Tisdale was going to try and take credit for those two guys. Come on. I think that's a stretch too far. Yeah, I agree. In summary, I agree. Paul Tisdale does have to go. What else are you saying to it? Dominator says, please do. Stay on for a few minutes. Keep running. Why not? Stay on. I mean, we've not got Christmas coming up or anything, according to me earlier on, so I don't have anything to plan. Do I? Here we go. Balcony in mountains overlooking the Med. Kieran Allen, please explain. You put a wee vision in my mind. It sounds lovely, but please explain. Yes, run it. Kush says yes. This board, says James Kerwin, won't admit that they made a mistake with Nancy. Wow, I think you're right. I don't disagree with that. But can they get away with it again without taking responsibility? I don't think so. I don't think they can. We'll keep going. Don't worry. We'll keep going for a few minutes. No to Lennon. Mary, probably because Neil Lennon has done an incredible job, both as a player and as a manager with Celtic. Neil Lennon is a legend at Celtic. He absolutely is. But perhaps the fact that he's at Dunfermline and the fact that he's obviously grieving a very personal loss to Neil over the last week or so, the timing wouldn't be right for me, Mary. And I'm only going to say it on that. It's the timing. It's not the individual. Absolutely. So here we go. And we've also got keep the wheels turning. Yeah. How credible is the source? Justin, the secondary source is Peter, isn't it? Peter's breaking the news. He will have a source providing him with information. How credible is the source? I guess we'll never know. But certainly the secondary source, Peter Martin, I would say is very credible in relation to Scottish football. He's a guy that's on it every day. He's on Scottish football news every single day. So I would say pretty credible in the second sense. Yeah, we will keep chatting. Don't worry. PG, will you need to move it to Murrayfield? Oh, you talked about the gig. I thought you were talking about Don Mackay there, Richard. Just while you're on, what I will do is I'll have a look at where we are with that, actually, because in relation to these gigs as well, you know, you do have detractors. People say, oh, you're in it for the money and all that. These gigs, it's very, very difficult to set them up. If you want to talk about finances, it's very difficult to set them up. And everything goes out up front. So I think people reckon that you make a lot more money than you actually do when it comes down to it. There's a lot of work involved in these events as well. And if they were rubbish, nobody would come to them. So people keep returning because we try to get the best guests we possibly can. And I think we've done that in recent times with the likes of Martin O'Neill and Scott Brown as well. But I'm going to have a wee look at Martin O'Neill here. You've got to imagine it from a Celtic fan's perspective, you know, spending a wee bit of time, not only on the stage, but backstage with somebody like Martin O'Neill and Scott Brown and Chris Sutton and John Hartson. It's just a dream come true. I mean, this is the thing. I'm so busy at times that I don't have time to stop and actually consider that. But it is a dream come true every single time. The fact that I am able to speak on a platform on a daily basis is a dream come true. Yes. So we have got over 2,000 people now waiting on tickets for that. That's unbelievable. I don't think we'll get a bigger venue, unfortunately. We've left it too late. But those who are in the arena that we do have, stay until he's away. It might be a couple of days, Ian. I don't know. Mind you, if they're going to release a statement 2 hours before the game last night, if a decision's been made, they need to make that. They need to make the decision and they need to make the announcement tonight. Same old movie, mate, says Joka Mola. PG, would you be who? Right, here we go. I'm going to bring this up. Ask me anything. Right, there we go for the next. I'll stick around for another 10 minutes. Ask me anything you want. Right. We've been streaming for 1 hour 48 minutes, and let's run. Okay, let's run for 2 hours. There's no point. My OCD is getting the better of me. Let's round it off. Ask me anything you want, guys. Graham Cotter, PG, who would be your choice as a new coach? I think there's 2 answers to that. I think there is an interim period, Graham, and then you're looking long term. We ran a show. I'll just have a look at the YouTube when it was. We ran a show before anyone was announced, and there was a short list of 4. So let's return to that, unless anyone new has been thrown into the mix. So I'm going to return to the forum. Just having a look at this. It wasn't that long ago. And we had the four of them. There we go. It was called Celtic's Next Boss. It was streamed a month ago. And the four names that we discussed that day were Wilfried Nancy, Kjetil Knutsen, Nicky Hyen and Kieran McKenna. And on that particular day, it just shows you the fickleness of football, that certainly Hyen has lost his job, and Nancy might lose his job as well. And that was only a month ago. I like Knutsen. I was very impressed with the Bodo Glimt team that we faced under Ange Postecoglou. But my concern with him is that he is one cog in a massive operation at Bodo Glimt. And if you were to bring a manager like him into Celtic, the entire club would need to be formed around that one cog. And what I mean by that is it comes into the data, the science, it comes into youth development, it comes into recruitment. So I don't think Celtic are ready for that. Maybe you need to bring him in and build all that around about him. But what I would probably be doing is I would be looking at Bodo Glimt and saying, right, okay, the manager's the guy getting all the focus. But whose idea was it to build the systems, the supporting systems, and the network behind Knutsen? Who's responsible for that? Do they have a football director who put all that in place? Because that's the guy I'd be looking at. We need to get to a situation where every now and again, an up-and-coming manager comes through, and people think that they're the next genius, the next Pep, and they want to try and get them at a certain part of the trajectory. And, you know, in order to do that, I think you need to look at the system and why the system's working. Would the system work at Celtic? And if the system isn't going to work at Celtic, are you willing to implement it and implement it quickly? So Knutsen, you couldn't bring him in mid-season, I don't think. He is a much longer-term appointment, and you would need to look at the makeup of Celtic and how that would suit him. I've got to admit, I liked what I seen when I did a bit of research on Kieran McKenna. I did like Kieran McKenna. He is very much reliant on the Jamestown analytics system that obviously is owned by Tony Bloom. And if you are in the same league as a Tony Bloom club, i.e. Brighton, GSP or Hearts, then you won't be able to buy a license for Jamestown. So what you would need to do at that stage is you would need to look at another what they call a gold standard data analysis system that isn't Jamestown. There's others out there. And I think that would be forward thinking on Celtic's part, because you'd be bringing in a manager, but you would also be implementing data analysis. And it's not just for recruitment, it's also for player performance analysis and also for analysing your opponent. We're not doing it well enough. I think that the recruitment shows that. I think the management recruitment shows that we're not doing it well enough. And I've said on this show before, we are using a system that is used by Airdrieonians, no disrespect to Airdrie, but we should be at the gold standard. Why don't we do it? Cost. That's why we don't do it. When you approach a football club and you give Peter Lawwell a presentation on a new data system, and I know for a fact this happened about 4 years ago, at the end of that, the person has to have such a buy-in to the data system you're presenting to them that they are willing to pay up to £1 million a year for a license. Comes down to cost. They weren't willing. They didn't have that much belief in data. They probably saw it as mumbo-jumbo, hipster nonsense, and they didn't buy into it. So we use the same systems that you and I, as viewers of this show or hosts of this show, could go out and get a subscription or a license to. We could get that online, and it would cost you a few quid a month. That's the type of systems we use, right? We need to use a gold standard system. Paul Tisdale claimed that he had one. Well, I'll tell you something, Paul. It's not working, mate. So, unfortunately, that's where we are with Kieran McKenna. There is also the question, and I looked into this just recently, there is a question around his release from Ipswich Town. He has got a bonus written into his contract that if Ipswich Town get promoted into the Premiership this season, he gets a £10 million bonus. So he ain't going anywhere at this moment in time. He is going nowhere. Why are we waiting? Why are we waiting? Thomas Davenport, that's a good question. We're going to keep, as I say, we're going to keep running for another 7 minutes or so. By the way, there's a slight delay because I need to read the statement so that there's no any dodgy words in there or anything that's going to get me into trouble with anybody's lawyer. And here we go. Henrik McLarson is obviously reading the room when it comes to Celtic PR. because he says that they might decide now, but they won't release a statement until about 11 o'clock at night. Well, here's the thing with regards to this, right? Fan media gets a hard rap. We get a hard time, from certain quarters, no less from the club. But every time something goes wrong at Celtic, they go into hiding. Their media team goes into hiding. We don't. We're here every day. And it's not just Acsom. You've got a lot of other hard-working Celtic supporters who are creating content every single day out there. Quinny joins us on a Monday. Celts are here producing content, quality content on a regular basis. The Huddle Breakdown, we've got Alan Morrison on once a month. Huddle Breakdown, creating content. It doesn't matter what the situation is at Celtic. We will create content. We never go into hiding. I think that's important as well. Here we go. It says, Kusk from one Fifer to another Fifer. Keep running like Ken. Absolutely. Now, that doesn't say keep running like Ken, as if there's a runner called Ken. This is just common parlance in the kingdom of Fife. Where in Fife are you from? Let us know. Here we go. Peter Barton doesn't kid on. He's a Celtic fan. He is a Celtic fan, Ross. He's a Celtic fan. I've met him a few times. He's a good guy. And he sent PLZ through when I had the studio, or I was based in a studio in Dalkeith. He sent his team through. Kerry Pollock it was. Done a brilliant wee piece on the new book. So fair play. Loving the overtime. Absolutely. He wouldn't have to fly in, Gordon, but he definitely needs to okay it. That's for sure. Now, going back to JP's point on this, JP mentioned the journalistic nature of Irish outlets and how they have started to question. There's some really good articles out there actually, why and how they're starting to question Dermot Desmond. We spoke to John yesterday. John Hughes is based in Ireland, and he was saying this doesn't happen. He does not get bad press in Ireland. Why is that? Well, he's very influential. He knows a lot of people. He can put the squeeze on people, etc. That's as much as I'm going to say about it. So it doesn't happen that often. But when you have journalists under that level of scrutiny who are willing to break ranks and run stories on Dermot Desmond, then you know that there's an issue. Absolutely. Joe, we will do that. We definitely will, Joe. Joe Hamilton Songs. We'll go live once a decision is made. I think you call that an emergency podcast or an emergency stream. Here we go. From the list of signings, Lupi reckons that only Tierney and Sriracha were decent. I think the other guy that I feel a bit sorry for in that respect is probably Iheanacho. Lupi, he hadn't played a lot of football before he comes to Celtic over a period of 2 or 3 seasons, and then he comes in, and I think that we started to get a tune out of him. I was really impressed with him in the League Cup final. I liked his attitude. I liked the fact that he was trying to drag his own teammates through the game as well. And Big Bruce says that Brian Wilson was better in the Beach Boys. I agree. Absolutely. Sky News not saying much. Sky News will, at this moment in time, Chilpil, be trying to verify it with one of their own sources, and I think they've still got a base in Glasgow, but they'll be trying to get someone's take on that so that they can okay it before running with that story as well. And with regards to Sky News, a few people have asked me about that. Sky News have asked me on 4 times since the Jamie O'Hara debacle, and it's not been for me, unfortunately, for them. Because I don't think it clickbait's what we're all about. And that day was very clickbaity, wasn't it? And I think afterwards they did try to follow up with a part 2 with Jamie O'Hara. I won't share screen time with that guy. The guy, he's got not a good word to say about Celtic Football Club, and with very little knowledge. He's a shock jock. And I didn't even know he was on the show on that particular day, or I wouldn't have been on it. I quite like speaking to other broadcasters. I think it's important to do it for a number of reasons. Just a few weeks ago on Sky Sports, when they called Dermot Desmond Celtic's owner, I had to correct him because it's just like a default position that people take on Dermot Desmond. I had to explain that he's not the owner. He's a 34.7% shareholder who has 100% of the control. And it's about those at Celtic standing up
to that situation, which isn't good enough. It's one of the main issues at Celtic right now. Is he getting sacked? I don't know, is the honest answer, Celtic girl Jota. But I will be looking forward to Jota coming back. And Bernardo is on Sky Sports being spoken to, John PJD. Why is Calmac not doing it? Calmac, I don't know. Is Calmac part of various meetings that are happening at Celtic today? Is he unavailable? Is that potentially why? Stevie boy, have you sent? Let me know how you sent them. Is it email, DM? I do unfortunately get to a point sometimes, Stevie, where there's a pile of messages and I'll sit one night and I'll go through them. So apologies that I've not got back to you yet. So let me know. How confident are you that it's done? All I can say, Lenny boy, I'm confident in Peter Martin. I think Peter Martin is a credible source. But when you look at the way that he has framed this, and let's bring it back up so I don't get this wrong. I am led to believe, there's your opening gambit. I am led to believe. So what Peter's telling us is he has a source who's told him something, right? Now, whether or not that source is at the football club or if it's someone who is outside the football club with a very good link into the football club, he's qualifying that. So what he's saying here is he's led to believe from a secondary or even a third source, okay, that discussions are now taking place with Wilfried Nancy and the Celtic Board to end his 2-week reign as Celtic manager. I had two very interesting discussions this morning where I know that the two people have got very, very good links into the football club, and we spoke about this, but they didn't say, I have heard, or it's going to happen today. Therefore, I would never mention it. I would never have mentioned it. So I'm going to say from that premise, if Peter Martin approaches these things similarly, and I think he will, he's got it on good authority. He's got it on good authority, Lenny boy. We've ran for 2 hours, which is enough for anyone to be listening to my dulcet tones. Let us know in the comment section what your thoughts are in relation to what's happening in the world of Celtic. We are hearing that Nancy will have left the building at some point today. We may well have an opportunity to do a reaction to that at some stage this evening. Thanks everybody for tuning in. Almost 11,000 across all the different platforms today as we speak, which is an incredible turnout from the Acsom faithful. Thank you, every single one of you. Give us a thumbs up on the video. And if you want more free content on a daily basis, win, lose or draw, subscribe to the channel. And we'll see you again tomorrow at 12:30 on A Celtic State of Mind.